What is going on, guys? Alex here, and this is the Zotac ZBox M. This is a mini PC based around creativity, so Photoshop, video editing, all of that type of stuff in a really small form factor. So let's get into it. The new Kinston A400 brings SSDs to everyone, boasting super fast speeds and a low price tag. Find out more in the video description or at the end of this video. So yeah, guys, this is the Zotac ZBox M, a mini PC based around creators, so whether that's video production, things like CGI or graphics using After Effects or Cinema 4D, or things like Photoshop and Lightroom. This mini PC is made to run those type of programs, and it's made in such a small form factor that if you're one of those creative people, like say a Photoshop artist who likes to draw out their sketches first, it leaves you with a lot of desk space because it packs a whole lot of performance in a really small form factor. So first of all, let's take a look at what you get in the box. So opening up the box, the first thing you get is the mini PC itself, which is housed inside the TV wall mount. Along with that, then you get a vertical stand for the mini PC, the surprisingly thin power brick, and either the American or the British power plug. Also included is the Wi-Fi antenna, a little bag containing the screws to mount it to the back of the TV's wall mount, and a CD drive. But if you don't have a CD drive, they also give you a mini USB stick which has all the drivers for this mini PC on. That is a really nice inclusion because the first thing you're going to want to do as soon as you've installed your OS is actually install the Intel 530 graphics drivers, which you'll find on here, along with all the other drivers that you'll need to do different things. So guys, before we get into anything else with this mini PC, I just need to talk about one thing. That is the fact that this is a bare bones system, so when you buy it, it won't have an SSD or RAM or any OS installed on it because there isn't a drive in it. What you need to provide is your own M.2 SSD or a 2.5-inch SATA SSD or even a 2.5-inch hard drive and an M.2. Basically, just provide your own drives and operating system, and you need to get your own laptop RAM, which is a DDR3 kind, to go inside of this. So once you have all your parts together, ready to go in, all you need to do is undo the two thumb screws on the back, slide off and open up the panel, take out the drive mount bay and literally plug in your RAM, snap it down, and then just plug in your SSD and literally just screw that down as well, and you're pretty much done. Installing an M.2 drive is actually a bit more difficult because you need to take off the CPU cooler, and if you do have an M.2 SSD, then the installation is obviously a bit more difficult, but you do get a much better performance with M.2 than you will with SATA. So now we've got the RAM, the SSD, and the OS installed. The first thing I did was actually go into this mini USB stick which they give you and install the Intel 530 graphics driver and the SD card reader drivers, because those things aren't stock with Windows, of course. So now let's just take a look at the design around this thing, because it's quite interesting. So yeah, the design of this mini PC is not the most stylish or sleek designs I've personally seen. In fact, it almost looks old-fashioned to a certain degree. The top or the left-hand side panel has a circle shape which is backlit in the color of blue. It's not RGB, which is a disappointment. Also on the side panel you will find the Zotac branding and a 4K UHD sticker, which I would definitely recommend removing. The material that it's made of is an absolute fingerprint magnet. If I just grab mine over here, pretty much you can just see it's got so many fingerprints on it, and if I just touch it you can see it's just creating a mess. Just clean it. On the opposite side of this then is the bottom panel, which is removable to access the SSD and RAM and install those two at the start as we did. And this is also where we'll find the main holes for ventilation from the CPU cooler and the 4 rubber feet for when it's flat on a table. I/O wise around the back we found a power jack, a pair of DisplayPort connections capable of a 4K panel at 60Hz, a single HDMI port, 2 USB 3.0 connectors in the form of a Type A, and 2 Ethernet ports capable of 1 GB per second speeds. And along with those Ethernet ports, we also have the antenna mount if you're using Wi-Fi. Along the top, we find a single USB connection covered by a rubber flap, which is a bit unusual, as well as more ventilation holes. And on the opposite side to that, we find the 2 thumb screws, more ventilation, and the mounting place for the vertical stand for this mini PC. Personally, throughout all my use on this PC so far, I've had it on the vertical stand for the whole time. I really do think that that is the best way to have it because it takes up a minimal amount of desk space, and it looks really nice with that logo on the side. It also means that it will actually run a bit cooler because the vents are more open to the air and there's less contact to a table than there would be if it was horizontal. And then finally around the front we find the power button, which is backlit, so it's red when it's off and green when it's on, something which doesn't really match the color scheme of this mini PC, but I'll forgive them for that. We then also find an infrared sensor for some unknown reason. I don't actually understand why this is here. I think it's a cool inclusion if you could use things like little remotes, or I don't know what you could use for infrared. Along with the infrared sensor, we then find the hard drive and the network indicator lights for activity, a USB 3.1 connector in the form of a Type C, something which I was not expecting in this type of mini PC. And then one of the best inclusions I've ever seen, which is a SD card reader hybrid with a USB 3.0 connector, which is obviously one of the sacrifices that you'll get, so it's either USB or SD card, there's no in between and you can't have both at the same time. This is obviously down to the fact that it is such a small form factor PC, and they just need to try and cut down the I/O as much as possible to keep the size small. And then finally, the last two ports we have are a microphone and headphone jack. So yeah, overall the I/O is actually really impressive on this mini PC. I was so impressed at the inclusion of things like the USB 3.1 in the form of a Type-C. That is definitely something I wasn't expecting. The way that they've tried to keep the space small by cutting down on the amount of USB ports is not something that I personally agree with. I'd prefer to have just a slightly thicker PC for more USB ports, but the inclusion of a hybrid SD card in USB 3.1 is actually one of the coolest things I've ever seen on a PC. So with all my parts installed, let's see the spec sheet of this mini PC. CPU wise, it has an i7-6700T, which is actually not a mobile processor, so if you open this up and you take off the CPU cooler, you can remove it and see the kind of ITX motherboard, which I'm still not sure what type of form factor it is. RAM wise, it has 6GB of DDR3 1600MHz RAM, and this is in the form of one 4GB stick and one 2GB stick, both from Samsung. So yes, DDR3 is obviously outdated by now. I kind of wish it was DDR4. I'm not going to say that it won't affect the performance because we know it will, but DDR3 still kind of works well enough for me now. I'm personally still using DDR3 in my machine. And drive-wise, no, I do not have an M.2 drive installed. I actually have a Samsung 850 EVO 1TB SSD installed in this system. So let's take a look at what type of performance you can expect whilst using this as a content creation PC. So I'll be using apps such as Photoshop, Premiere Pro and After Effects to just show you guys what type of experience you will get when you use this for apps such as that. So guys, what you're currently seeing is a screencast of me editing my own video with this mini PC. So if I just start scrubbing through the video, it actually does work pretty seamlessly with a couple of drop frames. No, it is not the perfect machine, and that's probably down to the RAM actually bottlenecking this machine. At the full preview window, if I start scrubbing through the timeline, it is a pretty much seamless experience with the odd dropped frame, and that's probably going to be caused by the amount of RAM that I have. So if you do get this, I would definitely recommend getting 8 or 16GB of RAM inside this machine. Temperature wise, when I'm not using this machine, so when it's just on idle doing absolutely nothing, it runs at about a toasty 45 to 49 degrees Celsius. That is about double the temperature of my current machine, which is in my room, and honestly that's not the best of temperatures that you want to run at. When under load, so when I was doing the benchmark, it was running at 70 to 80 degrees Celsius, which is actually really damn hot. As of that point, it then did start to thermal throttle on the CPU, so the performance did go downwards. Using Photoshop is just a seamless experience. Basically anything that I wanted to do in Photoshop, which isn't 3D rendering because I'm not that type of person, it just kind of ran really damn well, and there was no lag whatsoever. So when I just wanted to create the icon for this video, I could just do whatever I wanted and it would just show up and just be there straight away. The performance is actually really damn awesome in Photoshop, and the same can be said for Lightroom and Premiere Pro. I did actually do conventional benchmarks for this PC, so I did PC Mark 8 Conventional Creative Benchmark, and here is the score for that. And then I also did the Cinebench rendering test, so here is the score that it got for that. You can stack those up against your own personal experiences with your current builds or with builds that you can see online. So there you have it guys, the Zotac ZBox M, by far one of the best mini PCs that I've ever seen. And although it is a little bit pricey and it is not a complete system, quite honestly I think this is one of the best additions to anyone's desk, especially if they're a content creation person who wants a high performing PC that doesn't take up too much space. So thank you guys for watching. A big shout out goes to the team over at Zotac for sending me this PC to review. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, subscribe for more content like this, and I will catch you guys in my next video. The new Kinston A400 SSDs bring SSDs to everyone, boasting great looks to match any PC build, insane performance when compared to traditional hard drives whilst keeping the price low. For more information, check the link in the video description below.